It's not as easy for me to be balanced in my view. And then there's one other dimension to that too, is that I don't see the radical left as penitent in any real sense. And this actually extends out into the liberal community more broadly, because in many ways, the entire world has decided that the Nazis that was just not acceptable. But we have not.
Listen here, Hitler. Listen here, buddy. Okay? That is not acceptable. Genocide is bad. Oh my God, Peterson, what the
That about the communists.
What the
and still have places in the United States where there's statues to Lenin, and people still wear Che Guevara shirts and trumpet their alliance with even the communist ideals, not working class labor socialism. And so there's a lack of penitence on the left that really...
See, here's the deal. Here's the difference, right? Fascism is like more of a tendency than an ideology. It's a worship of power. Communism is like a theory of almost like societal evolution. So it's completely two different... You're comparing apples to oranges here. And Peterson, you had a chance to talk about communism to Slavoj Zizek. You failed to do the reading, mister. You failed the assignment. You didn't know what you were talking about. You wanted to debate a leftist. You got Slavoj Zizek, a pretty prominent leftist. You know, you could have some, I'm not a Zizek stan, okay? Let me just put that out there, right? But yeah, you know, the guy understands communism. You had him right in front of you. You could have talked to him. You could have worked this out. You didn't. You didn't know what you were talking about. You didn't do the reading. You read the Communist Manifesto, and then in the time since then, you seem to have forgotten even that. So what are you even doing? Why are you wasting our time trying to convince me that communism equals fascism when you won't even bother to understand what the communism even is?
And it's in the universities.
They won't draw boundaries.
And it's where, yes, but in different ways, the right won't either.
Yeah, but they drew a boundary between them and the Nazis. And the left has not.
Did they? Did they? Have they really done that? Are you sure about that? I would say what I'm seeing is a very unclear boundary.
Drawing a boundary between them and the communists. And I know it's harder too. I understand that it's harder. I don't think it is. I do think it is. I think it's harder because the thing about the communists is that they promised universal benevolence. And the Nazis never did. No, they said, no, this is for the areas, right? And so there's a transcendent promise in communism that's not there on the Nazi front.
That's just liberal conservative. Conservatives come in the front door. We talked about this last night. Like the conservative gone wrong when they're of the right is a big guy with a club who comes in and smashes stuff. And it's like, it's definable. You know what it is. Liberals, when it goes wrong, is like a swarm of paper-cutting mosquitoes.
No, it's a swarm of chimeras. Don't you remember the discussion of the dream? It's chimera. That's the liberalism gone wrong. It's me. It's the horror of Babylon, okay? Respect.
It has its tendrils up everywhere.
Oh, yes.
And if we can say, well, it's only on the left, then it wins because it can hide in that. And if we say it's only on the right, it wins as well.
And when you are off what I think of as your calling, you're not being transformative. And what you're being is all of a sudden you're like feeding.
Listen, be really careful about being. You got to always be transformative, or else white nervosa will get you. Okay.
It's kind of red, right, talking points, moving out in language that doesn't sound like you.
You know, like. White Nervosa, if you're listening, which I know you are because you always listen, okay? The Daily Wire has a stronger claim against me for watching this content, this 2-hour video, than you do. And guess what? They're not going to try to take down my channel like you do because they're not threatened. They're not afraid of me destroying the ideas of their creators like you obviously are. You are unable to allow the ideas of people like Xander Hall to be subject to criticism by anyone, right? Because you know they're too fragile, you know they're too weak, you know they don't stand up. Not even the Daily Wire is as bad as you in that regard.
And denigrating the opposition in a way that I think is bully-like. It makes you seem mean and small and petty and bully-like. And also
That's the problem with going after a single individual, too.
And we'll get to that with the
conservative
swimsuit.
friend talked about.
Right, because there's all these have different things that I had very different reactions to all.
I'm very disappointed that Jordan Peterson did not have a hot dog eating contest against Slavoj Zizek. That would have been interesting, but I feel like Zizek would be at a distinct disadvantage given his chronic allergies. You know, the man just constantly has that permanent cold, and like I feel like Peterson would be able to eat the hot dogs and sort of breathe through his nose, whereas Zizek would just be eating the hot dogs and he'd be unable to take in any oxygen. He'd have to like suck down oxygen with the hot dogs, and then if it goes down the wrong hole, then he's gonna have like a weird burp or something that might like slow him down. I don't know. I feel like Zizek would be a slight disadvantage.
But also what it does is that it eliminates your ability to differentiate the other side. And so when you start ranting about the Marxist,
that's convenient.
The Marxist socialist, like it's a rant and it's not you. It's like it's captured language and it's like, okay, sure, I can do an equal rant about the worst aspect of the furthest right and how they're racist. It doesn't have any bearing on the conservatives in my community, my friends who were in the military, my friends who are born again Christians. I mean, I can keep ranting a whole list of the worst of the right, but it's making them a monolith. And you pull
when I hear the same dog whistles in your supposed like good conservative value like community members, how do you explain that?
Individual into a monolithic thing, and you don't differentiate
How do you explain that the difference between your friends and those anti-Semitic monsters out there is that the anti-Semitic monsters will actually just like go mask off and say exactly who you're talking about, whereas your friends will hide it behind dog whistles, right? How do you explain that?
And you don't want people doing that with you, and we don't want people doing that with you, because we need you to discern them.
Yeah, okay, so you're called out in the dream by my hillbilly self for your moral failings, but you don't take that personally. And then
I feel it, and then I go,
you dismiss it.
It's so you. I'm not taking you personally, and then that's really